Hello guys, and today I'm in Kerbal Space Program, and what we're gonna do today is make an SSTO, a scientific SSTO which goes to the Mun. Yeah, we're gonna go to the Mun in a scientific SSTO, but we're also gonna encounter a lot of weird glitches and Kraken attacks and disastrous events. This SSTO was very disastrous. So stay tuned to see all the twists and turns and the roller coaster of a video this is. So here we are now building the SSTO. So it's a nice SSTO. I called it the Pearl Scientific SSTO because my Mark II class SSTOs are I named them the Pearl class SSTOs. I do sort of like the same thing that Matt Noun does, where he's got like names for different classes of SSTOs. This is a Pearl SSTO, and this is a scientific variant of the Pearl SSTO. So yep, here we are now building it. So the big wings here, and it's pretty nice. I like the design. I really like the design. It's pretty original. I've not seen an SSTO that looks like this on YouTube, that's for sure, and I don't think there is on Reddit. I'm not on Reddit very often though. So yeah, I've not seen an SSTO like this. So yeah, we've got the science equipment and things, and it's pretty nice SSTO. It's got like those two big tanks, but like vertical, like those Mark II tanks, fuel tanks, but vertical, and it gives that nice aesthetic flair. And I did a lot of modifications off camera. First of all, I changed those small landing gears, like the landing gears under the, what's it called again, under those vertical tanks. I switched them for like the bigger landing gears, because after testing I realized that they couldn't take up the force of impact, so I had to change them. And I also added some air brakes and other things, but it's not too major. So here we are now building it. So not much to write home about. It's a nice SSTO, and that's what I want to say. And yep, what are we doing? There we go. So yeah, not much to talk about this SSTO, this single stage to orbit, but it's gonna land on the Mun, and it may go somewhere else. That's weird. Well, I guess you're gonna have to stay to see what will happen next. So yeah, this SSTO, the Pearl Science SSTO. This is the scientific variant of the Pearl SSTO. That's what I named it. So we've now saved it in the SSTO folder, and let's now go. So yeah, on the runway, we fire our engines, the Rapier engines. We've got 4 Rapier engines and 2 nuclear engines, and here we are now go rolling on the runway. Oh, it's going nice and fast. Well, it's not going very fast at the moment. This is quite a heavy SSTO, and I added some extra air intakes. So here we are. Once we reach about 90 meters per second, we're gonna start pitching up, and just make sure to not bash those Rapier engines onto the runway. And we are now speeding up the ascent, because it's quite a long ascent. So for the beginning of the ascent, we want to try to stay as close to the sea as possible. Like, we want to pitch up only about 10 degrees, because we want to stay close to the sea, because that's where the air has the most oxygen. So we want to oxygenate our Rapier engines until they reach the magical barrier of 440 meters per second. Once our Rapiers reach 440 meters per second, we want to pitch up slightly more aggressively to try to reach the 10-kilometer mark. So once our Rapiers reach 440 meters per second, they will unlock the max thrust. And once we pass 10,000 kilometers, 10 kilometers, we want to like start flattening out a little bit. And then at 20 kilometers, we're gonna start firing the nuclear engines. And once we fire the Rapiers in closed cycle mode, we want to start pitching up quite aggressively, because now our goal is to try to gain as much vertical speed as possible. And I'm gonna shut down those rapiers once we have about 100 units of oxidizer. And there we go, we got our apoapsis nice and high. So that's how you do a nice ascent, an efficient ascent in an SSTO. You wanna hug the sea until you reach about 440 meters per second. Then you want to reach 10 kilometers, and once you reach 10 kilometers you want to flatten out again to gain as much horizontal speed. And once we reach 20 kilometers you're going to fire the nuclear engines and then fire the rapiers in close cycle to try to gain as much altitude as possible. That's probably the best ascent, from experience, of course. So yep. And now we've targeted the Mun. So there we go. Pretty easy to get a Mun encounter. Mun encounters aren't very difficult to get. And we're not gonna aim for any equatorial orbit, just any periapsis works. There we go. 30,000 meters Mun periapsis. So yeah. We've got 4 Kerbals on board. We've got the max capacity for Kerbals. We've got 4 Kerbals. So we've got Jebediah, Valentina, Bill, and Bob. So here we are now, just warping to our maneuver node, and then we're gonna do the burn. It's quite a long burn, because we do have pretty poor thrust to weight ratio, because nuclear engines are pretty weedy. So here we go now for our 4-minute burn. Quite long, but still it's fine. So here we are going for this. So yeah, it's about to reach the end of the burn. Oh, are we there yet? Just gonna close the burn just before it ends. There we go. And now just manual burn until we get a nice periapsis. There we go. 23 kilometers. That's good enough, but it's not good enough for my inner perfectionist. There we go. So whatever. Our Mun secularization maneuver node has been made. There we go. Let's now warp to that moment. It's quite a while, and here we are now at the Mun. So here we go, doing some science, and for some reason it says all hatches obstructed, can't exit. And then I realized, because for some reason when the cargo bay is opened, you can't leave. Like, it just says hatch is obstructed, can't exit. But when the cargo bay is closed, for some reason it works. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but I guess the game decided. So here we're now burning. Here we're now burning to get into a nice circular orbit. So there we go. Not perfect, but who cares? So here we are now in Mun orbit. So now we're gonna start our deceleration burn to land. It's gonna take quite a while. So there we go. So now let's just warp. Oh, here we are. So now we're gonna start our suicide burn. Now it took me quite a few attempts. This is, I think, the second attempt, because the first attempt I left it way too late and I ended up crashing into the Mun surface. And even this attempt I ended up sort of not getting it, because I came way too fast, and then I realized I had to use the rapiers in close cycle mode, and I timed it terribly, because then we just flew up, and now we're like just there, just like it's way too fast, and we smashed into the ground and body slammed onto the Mun surface. So not a very good descent. I could have definitely done better, but like, it works, so who cares? And we've now rolled down to a flatter part of the Mun. So now let's EVA our Kerbals. Let's do a nice EVA. Now I did speed this up quite a bit because it's quite long and boring. So do the arbitrary plant flag. So there we go, doing the science. Valentina can come too, as she gracefully smashes her helmet into the ground. Luckily it didn't shatter, so it's fine. Bill joins, and Bob does a science on his way. So there he does all the science. So there we go. So now we can take a nice screenshot. This will be the thumbnail, I think. And Jebediah can now get back on board to prepare for our ascent back up from the moon. And what else are we doing? Oh, Bob's gonna do some more science. There we go. So here we go, preparing for our ascent. So the ascent was the hardest part, because I kept crashing into some ground, and it was really annoying. Like, as you can see, like, oh look, like, literally, like, this is terrible. But this is the attempt that I managed it. Like, literally, I flew up, then I hit some ground, then I bounced up, and then after that I started doing this, like, turn. Like, I started doing, like, this ballerina turn. Like, I spun like a ballerina, and then I got back to the prograde marker, and then I fired my engines, and I was like, oh my god, that was terrible, but it worked. And if it's stupid but it worked, then it ain't that stupid. Or is it like that? Is it if it's stupid but it works, then it ain't that stupid. That's what I'm trying to say. So here we are now, going into a moon orbit. So yeah, worst ascent ever. Like, literally just turned the engines on, then flew up, and then did a ballerina spin, and then continued the ascent like nothing happened. That's what we call a textbook ascent. And oh, are we going to Minmus? Yes, this is a scientific SSTO, so why don't we go to Minmus, and we're gonna orbit Minmus to get some valuable science that we've probably already gotten, because we got the full trajectory anyways. But we're gonna go to Minmus as if we've never been to Minmus. We need science, even though we've already gotten science from Minmus. So there are some scientific experiments on board that I haven't used at Minmus. I've never used a gravioli on Minmus, and I haven't used yeah, that's it. I haven't used a gravioli on Minmus. So here we are now, going down to Minmus. Now I'm not gonna spoil what happens at Minmus, because it's sort of tragic. And here we are now doing the circularization maneuver node. So yep. And what am I doing? There we go. So there's our maneuver node. We've already done the burn. We've done the burn already? Oh, I skipped that part. Oh my god, that's lackluster. That is lackluster. Though, just be aware, I haven't used any cheats. I don't even know how to use cheats, but whatever. So here we are now doing a mid-course correction burn, and there we go, a nice orbit. Now our circularization, pretty low on delta V. So we've only got about 400 meters per second of delta V left. And yes, you're probably thinking this isn't enough to land on Minmus, but we're gonna have to see. So here we are now doing we are now circularized, and everything is grey, because this is a tragic part. We are now landing on Minmus. Everything seems to be working, but we've got very little fuel left. We've got 200 meters per second left. So yeah, we are doing our landing. Everything is grey, because everything is a disaster. And again, we've body slammed into the ground, which isn't very safe. Bob's gonna do his EVA, plant his flag, but it's not even worth it, because unfortunately everything was a disaster. And to make things worse, he literally slammed his face into the minty lands of Minmus. So here we are now, departing. And as you can see, we don't have enough fuel. We've only got about 50 meters per second left, so we didn't have enough to do a Minmus landing and return. So in the end, I was like, we're just gonna get science from space near Minmus and high above Minmus, and we're just gonna stay in Minmus orbit. So yeah, unfortunately it was a disaster, but it was a beautiful tragedy, because at least we got some science. So whatever. So Bob can now get back on board. And you may be thinking, oh, this is the last tragedy. There's more tragic events happening. Like, that's not ended yet. Now that I think of it, maybe I could have made it with like 50 meters per second, like with a Mun gravity assist, but who cares? So here we're now getting our cabin re-entry. We're gonna do some aero brakes. So yep, aero brakes. Did I say that right? I did. So there's like 5 minutes left. So yeah. So I've sped up this footage, I think 5 times. Previously I sped it up 4 times, but now I'm gonna speed it up 5 times because I don't think there's anything interesting left. So here we go. So now we go. Oh, did I do the signs from high above? Yes, I did. So we're now coming down to cabin. So we are now gonna do our aero brake pass. Just gonna reset. We're gonna basically enable all of those control surfaces because I disabled them when I was in space because it looks quite ugly to see control surfaces just moving even though we are in a vacuum. So here we're now doing our first aero brake pass. So yep, seeing some temperature gauges. There were a lot of temperature gauges on those air brakes because the air brakes have terrible heat tolerance, which is a little bit ironic because usually you would use these air brakes for aero brake passes, but for some reason, nah, weird. So we are now gonna retract our solar panels. We are now coming down for our next aero brake pass. I did quite a few passes, but yeah. So there we go. Past that. There we go. So I think there's one more aero brake pass left, and then I end it. So this time we're gonna be slightly more shallow because I didn't want my periapsis to drop too much, or apoapsis I should say. No. Oh, so there was another aero brake. Oh no, that was the last aero brake pass. So yeah, that was it. That was the last aero brake pass. So I wasn't mistaken. So here we are now. We're now gonna burn prograde to raise our periapsis out of the atmosphere, and then we're just gonna do retrograde. So now it's time for the landing. And the landing, it took me many attempts. Because for some reason, like, as I pitch up, if I pitch up too much, then the space plane just stalls and starts to spin very uncontrollably. So I had to keep a very shallow, like, descent. Which meant that in the end, I timed that terribly. Because in the first few attempts, I was too steep, so I ended up pitching too much and then stalled. And this attempt I ended up being too shallow. So now we are just gonna overshot the Kerbal Space Center. So yeah, and I'm now literally trying my best to like lose as much speed. I could do a very steep thing where I like just stall, but it's too late. So then I see, oh, there's the island runway. Why don't we go for the island runway? And I went for the island runway because I wanted to change up things. I've never actually landed at the island runway. And I went to the island runway, and it's totally not because I overshot the Kerbal Space Center. And as you can see, I'm now doing some very high G-force maneuvers, just trying to like land because I'm now coming in really fast. So I'm now slowed this down real time. Here we go. Will we make it? So far everything's been a disaster, but can we at least nail the landing? Oh, we're going really fast. I did a super high G-force maneuver. In real life this would probably completely destroy the airframe, but can we land? And we landed. But then I realized we are coming in very fast and like, oh my god. And so in the end we landed with very high vertical speed. So we ended up slamming and bouncing up. Luckily, the brakes didn't, the landing gear didn't break. And then I was like, oh, we don't have much space left. So I immediately deployed the chutes and realized, yeah, we're gonna slow down way too much. And then we just like stopped, like poof, and then just stop, poof. So in the end, we just like stopped right there, like very, very strong stop. So there it is, the disastrous SSTO, and on the left hand side is a video for you, on the right hand side is a playlist, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you for some more failures.